Blog Talk Radio.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Today. So let's get started. First of all, I would like to thank Miss Herr. Thank you for allowing us students to get the opportunity to work for this program. Can you please tell us how you were first introduced to construction?
Well, I was raised by a contractor, and I remember the first thing that really got my attention as I walked into my parents' home, which they still live in today, and my father was laying bricks and his partner was building a fireplace. It was like, I don't know, probably 14 feet wide, and it was only an 8-foot ceiling. So I remember thinking, gosh, that looks like fun. And my sister said it looked like a mess to her as far as she was concerned. So I guess it's all in the eyes of the beholder. You know, that's why she's into nursing and very smart technically, and I'm into creativity, which I like to take nothing and make something. So that was my first introduction to really wanting to get into construction, although I didn't participate in it for many, 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 many years. And it was against the grain when I started doing construction many years ago, 40 years ago.
Wow. Can you share with us how you started your construction career?
Well, I was married to a contractor for 13 years, and he had guys that worked for him, and they weren't getting the job done. And I started off as the gopher, so I would go and get stuff and like materials and stuff like that. So I kind of like little by little learned more and more. I cleaned up around the job sites. We had 20 acres that we developed, and then eventually he worked for my father full time. So I, during the day, would like put in foundations and call on some of the neighbors that we sold houses to help me read the transit level, and I enjoyed taking the people that we built houses for, and I would draw the blueprints back there. Out here in California, it's not going to happen. In Indiana, we just had to scribble them on a piece of paper, and that was good enough. So, yeah, I just watched for many, many years, and then the first house that I framed, the inside walls, my husband and I had built a house. We moved into it. Actually, we moved into the house about 2 weeks after the foundation was put in, and all it was 2x4 walls, period. That was it, a wall down the middle and the outside walls. And I went and finished because I got tired of waiting on him not to come home to do it. So the only mistake he said I made was I did not add 2 inches to the rough door openings when I framed the inside walls. Everything was straight and everything, but when you have a 36-inch door, you need 2 inches to get that trim around, if that makes sense.
Yes. So all the projects you've taken part in are really interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those projects?
Well, the first time that I remember that I thought was kind of cool, my husband had been putting up, my ex-husband now, had been putting up some rafters, and I remember thinking, gosh, he's just like incredible man that can do that. And then one day when he was busy and we needed some rafters up, he asked me, he showed me how to cut them and make up a pattern and how to pull it up and put the rafters, which is what supports your roof in a house. So that was the first thing that I remember doing that I was like kind of like amazed. I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. I went on to create a lot of stuff. Indiana State University produced a video presentation on me about 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, to encourage children to seek non-traditional professions, and working with just back in Indiana gave me a really good foundation. And then when I moved to California, I did get a contractor's license out here, and I unfortunately let it go 15 years ago, and I just have to take the test. They will give me back my old license, they said.
Oh, wow. I understand you have a long history of being involved with children. How does that play in with your construction work?
Well, my kids always helped us on our job sites and everything. I mean, they were we had a nice little group going on. And then after my divorce, after I fell apart for the first year, then I thought, well, the only thing you know how to do is construction. And I got back into it. I got a loan and built a house. And it didn't take me long to realize back in those days that people looked at me like I had no business doing construction. So I had to use my kids and my children. The first year, I mean, we built 6-sided tables. My daughter could cut out 5 of them a day, and there's like over 100 cuts on these tables, and my daughter could cut out 5 of these a day. So we had a little assembly line going in our pole barn. We cut firewood. I cut 8 dump truckloads of firewood one year, but we cut firewood, and we had a big 4-wheeler where we would take it out of the woods, and my kids. I didn't let my kids use the chainsaw. That would be a little bit kind of risque. But my kids helped me pour concrete. One concrete job that I had done with a guy, he popped off after we did the garage floor, and he said, the only help you have are those kids and that girl. And I said, I think I'll consider the source of your remark, and I didn't say anything. But the next day, me and the kids and the girl, the college student, about your age, we poured the front porch of the driveway without him. So he come back a few days later and apologized. But my kids have always been brought into construction. I also did a job in Laguna Beach many, many, many years ago for a guy. He was one of the developers of the Mirage, and he was kind of shocked whenever I was pouring concrete for him. I had done a big 3-car parking across the street for one of his neighbors, and so his daughter and him had came in from Vegas, and he was like, wow, this is really, so his daughter got glued by my side as I did a lot of other things around their house for them, and then I took her on a radio show. It was Radio Oz, and we interviewed her about her experience, along with a couple of other kids. I had another girl from Mission Viejo who used to watch me in the window when I was adding the room onto her grandparents' house. So I brought her in also and just talk about the experiences. Kids need to have as many positive experiences as they can get.
Yeah, I really agree with that. So how would you say that construction has shaped you into the person you are today?
Well, we all have our avenue to give us our self-worth. And for me, it was realizing that I could do something that I thought only, like my father, I thought he was he is a hero. What am I saying here? When I look at somebody, I mean, like watching him all the years in construction and the conversations around our table were the men that worked hard. Now, mind you, I got no support from back in those days. When I started construction, it was not politically correct for a female. So I just kind of learned. I just kind of shut up and did it. And I just recently painted my mother's friend's house in Costa Mesa, and her mother was my nurse, as a matter of fact, when I was born. And that was I mean, it's common sense, which is not very common. I mean, I can paint a wall white, and for some reason I think I'm doing a masterpiece.
So is there any other information you would like the listeners to know about?
Well, I'd just like for listeners to kind of open up their hearts with what young people can do. When I lived in Indiana, I had 50 to 100 kids every weekend in my house the last year that we were there. The high school paper wrote an article about me, Supermom to Cure Boredom, and we had a press release at the house. And it was really cool because the kids tried to do some stuff that didn't materialize before I came out here. And I would sit around my house and look at and see my house full of these kids everywhere. Around our pool table, we had a spiral staircase. The kids were hanging here and hanging there. And I would think, gosh, why don't other parents, I just think that we need to get more involvement with kids. When I work with kids, I want them to do the real thing. Like I took 25 kids from home, the Marine bases that are not here anymore, to it was like a Home Depot, it's a home club. And those kids built a 6-sided table with hand saws, and the next day a skateboard jump ramp. And I was kind of shocked. I make over 100 cuts on a 30-degree angle with a hand saw. It's pretty amazing. So, no, I think there's a need out there for us to look at what our young people can do. They need the education. Trust me, they need the math, the science, the history, but they also need the creativity just as much. It's a great way for a person to to gain self-confidence, I redid a house in Newport Beach, Newport Coast years ago, and the young kid was always getting into trouble, fire alarms going off, police coming out, mother was here or there. So I thought, so I asked him to paint a wall, and so when his mother got home, he says, make sure Grandma and Grandpa know I did that. So, yeah, letting these kids have a feeling of accomplishment is pretty important.
Okay. Thank you so much for this interview, and I hope the future brings you a lot of success. So lastly, can you give us some contact information?
Yes. The best one is through the nonprofit that I run, which is the one that you're interviewing for, which is create2learn at yahoo.com. And then my phone number, of course, is 949-307-2079. Thanks.